Matt and I are breaking out the Haterade today as we give some players that we think will bust in the second half on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source for fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes you to the channel and gives you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, but most importantly to Matt and I, guys, join us on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth, personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute podcast. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. And guys, with the All-Star break being here, we're switching things up a little bit. We're going to do some, bust, breakout, sleeper kind of content, some, maybe even some stuff looking into next year a little bit. We're going to have some fun with the episode types during the All-Star break here. And if you guys have anything specific that you want to see, feel free to drop a comment. And if you actually leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify and leave us an episode and idea, there's a way better chance that we'll get to it and make that episode happen. And if we do, we'll give you a shout out as well. But today we are focusing on some busts heading into the second half, and we have some a couple All-Stars. I think about 5 All-Stars on this list, so some names you're definitely going to want to hear. Matt, why don't you tee us up today?
All right, sounds good. Thank you. We're going to talk about Seth Lugo. We've talked about selling high on his value for a while now, but ultimately I think this is time to really bow out and get rid of him. This isn't a sell high show or anything of the sort. We're actually going to do a trade for and away probably tomorrow. But with Seth Lugo, he's a guy you want to capitalize on that. And here's the reason why, because I don't think it's sustainable whatsoever. His xERA is 3.93. His ERA on the season is a 2.48. Okay, that's almost 2 runs higher. It's a run and a half. Okay, his fastball velocity has never really been his thing, so he's not blowing you away with it. But he's giving up hard contact. His average exit velocity he actually is giving up is 89.3 miles per hour. That's enough to get the ball over the fence without a doubt. He's not really creating the chases. He's definitely not whiffing, but you could see that in the strike to, innings pitched ratio. One thing he does do is not strike guys out. And I mean, not walk guys, but he's letting guys barrel up. He's allowing hard contact about 40% of the time. He isn't even creating a lot of ground balls. And honestly, too, his off-speed pitches are kind of on the flatter side. It's really just his breaking ball and his fastball that are really just doing things. And you look at what he's relying on this year. His fastball has been really unhittable at a 183 batting average for a guy that throws throws it at 92 miles an hour. I can't see this as being sustainable. You look at also his other successful pitch, which is a curveball, and that's a 175 batting average. Again, a guy that just isn't throwing that all that hard either. I mean, it's 79 miles per hour, which is decent. Just, I understand he's getting movement, but right now anything can change with that. So, his sinker's getting hit at a pretty decent rip at a 278. You look at his slurve at a 269. All these other pitches, because he has a full arsenal. He should be a better pitcher than what he is ultimately they're getting hit, and the current method that he's being successful with isn't sustainable. He's pretty much a 2-pitch pitcher, and that is not good. So usually with 2-pitch pitchers, they usually get figured out pretty quickly. And you also got to take a look at this. If a guy who is how old are we talking again? 34 years old, has never had a season where he's finished with a sub-3 ERA and is about a run and a half difference on his ERA, what it screams to me is there's worse days to come. Okay? After this All-Star break, after this, I have a feeling not too long after that we're going to start seeing a downwards turn for the 34-year-old. You would have told me he's 28, 29, 30 even. I would have started buying it because pitchers get, age gracefully, but the one thing is, if guy has been trending in a consistent basis of being like a mids to high 3 ERA guy with not a K per nine, Seth Lugo, who's having an all-star season, who has made the all-star team, I think is on a serious trajectory to completely bottom out. And I think we're about to go and hit, you know, the iceberg and see how bad and how much damage he's really going to do to your fantasy team. So I'd bow out as soon as possible.
So I think we're actually going to disagree a little bit on this one. Not like majorly, but just a little bit. I'll start by saying this with Seth Lugo. You could totally capitalize on how good he's been so far. 100%. If you can trade Seth Lugo for a top 25, 30 starting pitcher, I think you definitely go out and get that done. But if you can't trade him for that or a pretty solid bat regarding, whatever position you need, then I'm holding. And I'll kind of preface why. I think we kind of know who Seth Lugo is at this point in his career. Through 768 innings, he's a 3.33 ERA guy. And once again, across those 768 innings, 764 strikeouts. So he's always going to hover around that K per nine. Never really always reaches it, but kind of, gets there almost. The whip on his career is a 115. He's at a 108 this year. That's not crazy far off. And I will say this, with those Kansas City Royals, I feel like they've been unlocking a lot of upside when it comes to starting pitchers of late. I'll point out Cole Reagans, who's another one that they've done it with, who's having a pretty successful year. Do I think Seth Lugo is going to continue to be a sub 3 ERA guy? Not at all. But do I think he can pitch to a low to mid 3 ERA the rest of the way with around a K per nine, win some games and have a solid whip? For sure. Matt mentioned, the xERA, which is an ERA indicator. I'll throw FIP out there, which is another one, which actually has him at a 3.31. So if Seth Lugo can pitch to a 3.31 the rest of the way with, once again, around a K per nine, good whip, win some games, I'm not selling unless I'm getting, I'm maximizing my value on a guy like this, because he has been successful in his career, has a pretty solid track record, especially even over the last 3 years where he's been a mid 3s ERA guy. Once again, if he's doing that for you in today's day and age around a K per nine, I think we're holding unless we can maximize that value once again. Matt, again, of course, brother.
I got a little bit more. For starters, I'm not saying to drop if that's how that take was taken.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
It would be a maximize, but also you got to realize too, for him to finish with what his career staple is at a 3.30 or a 3.60, which is 3.30 career ERA, but the last 2 years 3.57 and 3.60 and 3.50 the year before. For him to get there for that trajectory, you're going to have worse days to come. The second half is going to be ugly. So that's what I'm getting at. I think we've seen the best, and now ultimately it's going to just take that turn where it's just not going to be good. That was the whole point of my argument. He's been good, but it's just not sustainable. But go ahead, dude. Take this next guy here.
Yeah, sure. Let's hop in. Let's talk a little bit of Bryce Miller, right? The young Seattle Mariners starting pitcher. Bryce Miller is an interesting guy because last year had a lot of ups and downs. He's been messing with his pitch mix over the last couple of years. And it even shows because this year 1% of the time there's a cutter and a curveball in there. He's throwing a slider 7% of the time. So I really think he's been playing around to see what works for him. But you know what? This year he's getting barreled up a lot. He's getting hit hard. Not a lot of ground balls. Not really getting a lot of chases and whiffs. There's really not a lot of things to like. The fastball velocity, okay, a lot of guys throw hard in the league these days, and he's limiting walks, but that's not really getting me super excited either. His getting good results on the four-seamer and the split finger, but the sinker's getting hit a little bit, the sweeper's getting hit, and like I said, for a guy that's tinkering, you never really truly know how much he's going to rely on what pitch and how successful he's going to be on any given day. On the year, it's a 3.63 ERA with 19 starts, 109 innings pitched, 98 strikeouts, and a 106 whip. I think the whip is something we're going to see go up a lot, and I know I was looking over his recent starts of late, and honestly, he hasn't been doing as good as he did early on in the year. I think he's going to, be a guy that kind of gets figured out. In his last, outing, he only had one strikeout. in the June 4th start against Baltimore for Bryce Miller. He had a 1.59 whip. The one before that against Minnesota had a 1.2 whip. He's just kind of been all over the place recently. So I'm not buying into, the preface stats that we see right now, which actually look pretty good. So I think you need to go out there on Bryce Miller and honestly just capitalize on that value. And I think that's such a big thing in fantasy baseball that you really need to do.
Yeah, and coming up next is my take on Bryce Miller and a whole bunch of other guys that we need to talk about, but we'll be coming up right after that.
I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer and fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app, dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood, and I can get it done. And guys, I didn't steer you wrong when it came to the NBA Finals with those Boston Celtics, and I'm not going to steer you wrong here. There's so many great bets coming up this summer when it comes to the MLB and FanDuel. So you need to make sure you get on FanDuel because FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer now. And Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Exploring my skills on Prize Picks this season adds an extra layer of excitement to daily fantasy sports. With just a few taps, you can transform $10 into $1,000 easily, and Prize Picks is incredibly user-friendly. You can make selections and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. And as the host of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, here are some rock-solid picks for you. In Paul Skeens' next start, opt for him to have higher than 8 strikeouts. Opt for Jose Ramirez to have higher than 1.5 total bases in his next outing, and he's been on an MVP pace, so I think that's a lock. And also opt for Bobby Miller Jr. to have higher than 0.5 home runs in his next game. And guys, he's in the home run derby, so I think that's an easy bet as well. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for the first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for your everyday to bring you the biggest sports stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And then once again, Matt and I are introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on the Subtext platform, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As the season continues to unfold, you can rely on us for dynamic content, and you're going to get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications, injury reactions, and a whole lot more. Stay ahead of your fantasy league by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where the path to your victories begin. Subscribe now and elevate your fantasy baseball experience to a new level. And guys, if you are interested in Subtext, you can find the link in the bio wherever you're listening or watching, or available on any of our social media platforms. But Matt, as you know, that's always a lot. So I'm going to pass this next guy off to you, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, I got you. And we're going to talk about. Well, first I want to go back to Bryce Miller.
Of course, yeah. Totally forgot we were still on Bryce Miller. That's my fault.
It's all good. We're taking our time today. Bryce
Sure.
Miller is somebody that, like Dom said, we see worse days coming. A 3.63 ERA isn't the most wonderful. It's a mid-threes ERA, and we know he finished with a 4.32 ERA at the end of the year. And what really tells me that it's, we're not going to see improvement is he has the same underlying stats as he did in 2023. All the stuff that Dom highlighted that's going on in 2024 really hasn't gotten any better except for the movement on his fastball and off-speed pitches. So I just think that Bryce Miller is just not going to be as good as we think he's going to be for the second half. And he might be a next year kind of type guy where he kind of is able to kind of figure out what's going on with his pitching and kind of make it better. It's kind of just waiting and seeing with Bryce Miller, and I don't think this is the year. But we're going to move on here. I'm going to talk about Mr. Ronel Blanco, one of my guys here. And Blanco is having a great year. And, I don't want to, kind of like poo-poo on it, but here's the thing. He has an age 30 breakout, and it's a little bit on the fence, right? Because at age 30, pitchers, that's the last kind of ditch effort of where we're going to see an improvement. And he's never really been that guy. In 22, he had a 7.11 ERA, should have opened up a store. In 23, he had a 4.5 ERA. And this year he finally comes out and I guess he figured something out, but his fastball is super flat. He has a fastball velocity of 93 miles per hour to boot. Yes, he's not giving up good average exit velocity, but he's not too far off either. A mile in each direction makes it elite. He has got kind of getting guys to, chase a little bit. He is creating the whiffs, but he's not striking guys out at a consistent amount of time. Like, he has pitched 109 innings, but he has 100 strikeouts on the dime. He is walking guys. He is allowing guys to barrel up. Yes, he's suppressing, the how often people are able to get a hard hit on him. But you would hope that with that would come with, in parallel, the ground ball production. And he's not doing that either. Blanco has just been able to kind of coast and get away with a couple things that I think can easily swing, have the pendulum swing in the other direction. Again, his four-seam fastball has been successful at a 179 rip, at a batting average of 179. His slider too, and even his changeup. And you know what? I don't like the fact that those are his most successful pitches, especially with him having a put away of 17.2% on the four-seam fastball, which is not getting a lot of movement and is not really that fast, so it's not really blowing you away. But then he mixes it up with a changeup, and is getting a put away at 25.5% of the time. So yes, he's throwing that slider a decent amount of time as well, obviously more than the changeup, but at the same time, it's only about 100 pitch difference. He's pretty much relying on those three pitches the predominant amount of time, and they're just not something that I'm going to stand by and say, okay, cool, he's really going to be the next guy. I think there's worse times ahead, and I think that the more reps teams get against him, the more they're going to be able to figure him out, and I think that is coming up soon.
Yeah, I hear everything you're saying, but Blanco's such a tough one for me because he's actually a name that I wanted to talk about too. But as I started to deep dive him more, I was just like, why does it look like everything looks good for him? And then the more I look, he's a guy who actually has a decent minor league track record, not great, but decent. He's never thrown a lot of innings, so I don't ever think we really got to see who Ronel Blanco is as a pitcher. You're talking about a guy who's never thrown 100 innings. I don't know about his, college track record, but, or anything before 2016, because I don't have access to that, but has never thrown 100 innings before. This is the first year he's thrown 100 innings. Do I think he can maintain a sub-2 ERA? Probably not. The underlying stuff when it comes to ERA, doesn't look great. So I will say that. In the sense of, I think Ronel Blanco won't be as good going forward, but is there a chance he's still a usable starting pitcher for fantasy? I do see that. He does pitch for the Astros, which are a pretty, solid team. So he's just a tough one for me. I hate to have to ride the fence on him, but that's kind of where I'm at. Matt, feel free to jump back in, brother.
I actually got a question for you. Your point about not seeing him pitch that often and him having such a low innings pitch count.
Hey, he might have an innings limit. That's another one. Yeah, of course.
Well,
I see that for sure.
There's that, but also too, wouldn't you want to factor in fatigue? I didn't touch on it, but
100%. We see that's a great point. We see that very, very often. I think it's a very underrated statement. Even a guy like Spencer Strider a couple of years ago, when he was doing his thing, breaking out towards the end of the playoff run, he wasn't available. I know that's another thing that we could definitely look out for with a guy like Blanco. So definitely keep your eyes on him going forward. Definitely a good name to watch out for. But let's keep things pushing. We're going to try and burn through a couple of names here. Let's talk about another All-Star. Let's talk about Ranger Suarez of those Philadelphia Phillies. I know the underlying stuff looks great too. Another guy that I hate to have to ride the fence on, but I think we have enough track record with him. I think we've seen the track record before of Ranger Suarez. We know that he can go on stretches like this and be super successful, but I just don't see the world where he continues to be a 2.70 ERA guy with the K per 9 and the whip being really good. He's even in his good years, he's never been this good at control. He's a career 1.25 whip once again, Ranger Suarez, Philadelphia Phillies all-star starting pitcher, who's we're talking about here. I really just don't think any of this is sustainable. A guy who's been good in short stretches, don't foresee it coming, already at 114 innings, do 125 last year. Another guy that fatigue could be a factor. I know the Phillies looking to make a long run in the playoffs. He might be a guy they're relying on, and another guy down the stretch. Maybe we don't see him pitch that much come playoff time for fantasy baseball. So I'm not really buying into it for Ranger Suarez.
So coming up next is, me disagreeing completely on this one, and you'll find out right after this. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travels heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn about. And yes, we're even talking about your rival city. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more, Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball cities, even in your rival city. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for you this summer, traveling this MLB season. The right stay you can make for you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on their site or Booking.com's app. So let's return to Ranger Suarez here. And, you say fatigue, you say he has never really been that successful, but usually what gets in his way is injury. He is the prototypical, what I like to call the phalanges. If you haven't heard the expression, I have been dropping it around a lot, but phalanges is pretty much my little slang for saying they're just incredibly injury prone. Yes, I know they're a bone in your finger, but ultimately, Ranger Suarez has just been a dude that's just never been a guy that we know for health. And the first time we get him to be consistently healthy throughout a season, we're getting serious production. The underlying stats do support it. And you've seen even throughout his career where he has been hurt, he has been able to maintain a decent ERA. You look at, 2022, for instance, 155 innings pitched. He had a 3.65 ERA. Even in 21, did get hurt at the end of that season. He still had 106 innings pitched and a 1.36 ERA. Now, obviously, that is not sustainable whatsoever. I think there would have been at least a bad month that would have bumped that up to about a 3. Last year, he was coming off the injury, and you know what? You even saw in the playoffs of Ranger Suarez, they did a lot of bullpen games where he was like more of an opener where they only let him go about 4 innings deep because they were worried about him. This year, they kind of let him loose, gave him a longer leash, and he was able to perform. So I think Ranger Suarez, is actually somebody that we're going to be talking about next year that's going to be ranked pretty decently high. And this guy is going to be well slept on. And Ranger Suarez is one of those dudes. But
real quick, can I have back in 1 second?
Yeah,
I know we've kind of dragged a little bit today, but I do want to just add one last point on Suarez. One thing, he is hurt at the moment, back tightness, but that just might be hey, the Phillies saying, hey, we don't want to risk it with him in the All-Star game. But his last 3 starts in particular have actually been pretty bad. 27 innings, 21 Ks, 5.86 ERA, 1.55 WHIP. So and last one's against Oakland as well. That was 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, 6 ERA, 1.5 WHIP. So I just think there are worse days ahead. I'm not saying he'll be bad. No, kind of like you said with Seth Lugo. I'm not saying that he's going to be bad. I just don't think he's this good of a pitcher to be a sub-3 ERA, and the track record on his control kind of speaks for itself. So I think if you can capitalize on, once again, how good he's been, I think you could go ahead and try and do that. But hey, if you're not, you hold and you see where the second half heads for you win stores.
I don't disagree on that. Any guy that we can kind of trade to kind of increase the value or get a guy that's kind of more of a sure thing, I'm always about it. He's a great kind of like sell high kind of candidate, but at the same time, it's just, I kind of think there's also better days to come where you might be giving up this piece that is going to be consistent down the stretch, and then you could have a flop on the other side. But anyway, we spent way too much time. We're going to talk about Ronaldo Lopez of the Atlanta Braves. It's really weird that he's even being as successful as he is. He hasn't been a full-time starter since like 2019. He's had a couple starts in between. In 2021, he had 9 starts. In 22, he had 1. 23, none. And now he's gone out there and had 17. Okay, this is the most innings he's pitched since 2019. And in 2019, he had a 5.38 ERA. And, even the strikeouts were about 20 under. So this is the season he's having right now where he's having a K per 9. He's having a 1.8 ERA. is just completely unsustainable. He has a 306 FIP, and then you look at a little bit deeper, and his xERA is more of like a 424. His fastball velocity has always been nice at a 95.4 miles per hour, but he's giving up hard contact at a rip of 89.5 miles per hour. He's not really getting guys to chase. He's not really creating the whiff. He's walking guys at a pretty consistent pretty consistent rate. He's allowing guys to barrel up. He's, giving up hard contact at a consistent amount, and he's not even producing balls to help kind of, counteract the hard hits and things like this. So with Ronaldo Lopez, there's a serious hole in his game, and I foresee that he's going to flop completely. So me personally, I want to trade him. It's been a great first half, and I just want to get him off my lineup entirely if I can.
Matt, Lopez is actually one we're in full agreement with, so I'm not even going to waste any more time here. You did a great job with him, so I think I'm just going to keep it pushing to the next guy. Let's talk about another all-star. Let's talk about Shota Imanaga, starting pitcher for the Chicago Cubs. And I saw this one coming, and I hope you listen. I really hope you listen to me because Imanaga's gone the other way. After his start on May 18th against the Pittsburgh Pirates, Imanaga had an 0.84 ERA. After that start, so we're talking about Imanaga's last 4 starts, he has pitched 43 innings, 40 strikeouts, a 5.61 ERA. Batters are hitting 289 against him over that time, and the whip is out of control as well. It's like a 1.3 plus whip. I don't think he's bad, but another guy that just, the underlying stats actually don't look as good for him as some of the other guys we've talked about. Don't get me wrong. There's definitely things that do look really well, including the walk rate and how much he's getting guys to chase. But you know what? He doesn't throw hard, getting barreled up a lot, getting hit hard, not a lot of ground balls. So there is stuff that looks bad for Imanaga as well. So honestly, if Imanaga pitches the rest of the way to like a mid-3s ERA, around that K per 9, I think there's, a decent whip here because of the not being able to walk guys. But I think that the ERA, for the rest of the way is 3.5, 3.6 plus. And for it to be that bad, there's blow up stars. He kind of reminds me of a low end Aaron Nola with a better control, if that makes any sense at all. But get rid of Imanaga. I'm kind of over it. Another all-star that I think is gonna, not treat us well in the second half.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you look at like what his pitch distribution is, right? He pretty much lives on 2 pitches. Like he lives on that 4-seam fastball and that split ball. He throws the 4-seam fastball 54.7% of the time, the split finger about 33% of the time, and then it's 6 for the sweeper. Curveball 4, 0.9 for the cutter. Sinker, it keeps getting worse and worse. He really pretty much just lives on it, and that's not a sustainable pitch mix for a pitcher to maintain this. So I'm in full agreement with everything you just said. I just kind of felt like we had to highlight that as well. He does have a full arsenal. I think he has more of like a future prospects kind of thing where like maybe if he goes and figures things out next year, there's some serious changes to his pitch mix and he kind of perfects the other pitches in his arsenal. Imanaga can definitely be a nice little sleeper or kind of like a bounce back player for next year because I think there is worse days to come. Now, this next guy here is kind of Dom's guy. Do you want to take him first since this was your name?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. Let's talk about Jurickson Profar. And it's so funny. I hope we have some listeners that have been around for a while and remember that this guy was just supposed to be the next superstar. He was supposed to be Acuna before Acuna, Soto before Soto. Just the world was Jurickson Profar's oyster. And it actually really is cool to see Profar make the All-Star team this year. But I think it's his track record speaks for itself. I'm not buying the age 31 breakout. A lot of the underlying stuff really is supporting how good he's been, but I'm still not buying it. I really just think there's, a second half here that's not great. Honestly, the counting stats do look pretty good. The batting average is great, but 5 steals and 14 home runs isn't blowing me away. So I really think this is a guy you could try and capitalize on. Once again, Matt said this isn't really a trade for and away episode, but I do want to point out where you can profit as a fantasy baseball owner here. And I think Profar is a guy, once again, he's played almost every single game in the first half. He has to stay healthy the rest of the way. So when we are seeing these numbers, don't forget, with the 59 RBIs, 52 runs, he's played 97 games and has 338 at-bats under his belt already. A guy who has constant injury history under his belt. Just not buying it, guys. I really don't see a big second half for Profar. So, capitalize while you can.
I mean, this is a giant red flag for an age 31 season breakout. Like, ultimately, Profar is just not the guy. He's having a career year at age 31. I'm just not about it. Yes, these underlying stats are pretty cute, but at the same time, bat speed is low. He's just, when he makes contact, he has a great, he's doing it consistent at 90.8 miles per hour, but his launch angle sucks. So even his home run pace right now is completely out of norm. His highest season was 20, and right now he's on pace to go for 30. So with Profar, there is worse days to come, or he gets hurt, which is also around his, in his equation as well. So with Profar, trade him now, or just capitalize as much as you can. Even if you're giving up what you think is 50 cents on the dollar, I promise it'll be $100 on the dollar once he's taken a complete dump, and that's coming really soon. But guys, please like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, and tell your mother, tell your friends, tell everybody, post us everywhere. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for being the best fans in the world, and have a great rest of your day. Go ahead.
Real quick, Carlos Correa, another bust, all-star, second half. Don't buy it.
Don't buy it. All right, peace out.